So the moment is here. I have finally shot about 10,000 rounds or so through my Daniel Defense M4A1, which is a rifle I've featured, so many times on this channel because it's my favorite. And so I wanted to use this time to do more of a video kind of review of how has it held up after this kind of round count. And so goal of this is to, share with you my info and my experiences. So if you're looking at this rifle or know someone who is, you can make an informed decision. So keep in mind that this video will be more of a review of the rifle as a whole, but I will go into more detail on specific parts like the bolt carry group, but it won't be anything more of like, individual lights or even the optic and stuff like that. So just kind of keep that in mind. This is going to be more like holistic. So I'm going to structure this video in a very similar format to my M16A4 review video that I did not too long ago. And basically I'll start by giving a summary up front of what I think. And then also I'll give some more context on how I've been using this rifle, just so you have some context of like, this is the lens that you're looking through or that I'm looking through. And then I'll go into some of the more key areas that I think would be, really helpful to touch on. And those will be, with my trusty phone, we'll have performance and accuracy I'll talk about first and my experiences. We'll also look at durability and reliability of the rifle as well and how that's held up over time. And then we'll do what I like about the gun, what I don't like about it, and just a summary at the end, again, of, would I recommend it? So let's start first with the summary, which basically is I find this rifle to be a very dependable, reliable gun that I genuinely feel very confident always picking it up whenever I need to, whether that's for range time, kind of bump in the night situations for home defense. I have that confidence, which is really good. Also, the fact that it's a 14.5 inch barrel, 16 when you do the pin and weld, it makes it very accessible from like a paperwork or legality standpoint for the majority of states. And so that also is another really good thing about it. But the biggest downside of this rifle really is the price. When I bought it, street price, it was about $1,800 in 2017, which is not considered cheap for an AR-15, although there are definitely more expensive ones. That is the biggest downside I would say to this rifle, but notice I didn't mention anything about the actual performance or durability of the rifle, so keep that in mind, budget is relative. So with the summary out of the way, why don't I share a little bit about how I've been using this rifle, just so you have some context into how I've kind of drawn my conclusions and what my experiences are. So I bought this rifle in 2017, which is seven years ago, because oh my god, I've had this thing forever, it feels like. But hey, speaks again to longevity, so that's good. But I picked it up in 2017, and it's been my main rifle that I've been shooting since then, although I have shot others, of course. But I've primarily been using this gun within about 100 yards or so. That's just the distances which I practice are most applicable for me. But I have taken it out to about 220 yards as well. Of the 10,000 rounds, I've shot about 50-50 steel and brass. I'm thinking I might be a little more steel than that, but it's roughly 50-50. And ultimately, I did buy this rifle stock just, from my local gun store, but I changed out parts to make it look like the M4A1 Block II, purely for aesthetic, personal reasons. I've never actually had to change any of the parts because they've broken or they've worn out or anything like that. Also, just some context in general about Daniel Defense rifles. They generally are considered to be at that price point right below diminishing returns. I would say it's a pretty fair assessment that they're generally regarded as very premium rifles before you start to get into the custom, although that doesn't mean there are people who think that it's not worth it. Some people definitely think that the premium that Daniel requires or that they ask is better spent on more affordable brands where you can have better, more money to be spent on ammo and training and attachments, which I think is an entirely valid criticism. But that's just some background of what I've kind of noticed people would say about the brand just whenever I hear it being talked about throughout the years. So let's talk more about performance and accuracy of this rifle. And keep in mind, a lot of performance and accuracy really has to do with the shooter. You have to understand how to use the rifle and how to apply, some very fundamental skills if you really want the rifle to perform as well as you do. So that is something to keep in mind as I go through this section. And actually with that, I will say when I very first started, this is a little more personal. My groups weren't too good because this is the first AR-15, type rifle that I was using. My very first gun was the 9130 Mosin, and so bolt action very different. But so moving to this AR-15, it was a little different, and at first my groups weren't too good. But as I started getting better, the rifle performed just fine. Kind of my litmus test, I would say, is bench rest at 100 yards. How did I do? Groups are 2 to 3 MOA, very acceptable for this type of rifle, which it's not built to be precision like a sniper rifle, but it's very acceptable. And ever since I started shooting, better and finally got up to the 10,000 rounds, it's always shot with those groups. So like my M16, which is a BCM rifle, not a Daniel Defense rifle, accuracy was always good as long as I had applied the proper techniques. Now, let's say I'm trying to shoot a little faster or practice what to me are more complex techniques like target transitions or, build drills. Then my accuracy or the rifle shoots off, a lot more, my groups widen up. But again, I would attribute that more to the shooter and, his skill as opposed to the rifle just, suddenly being really wrong. So in keeping with performance too is just also how usable is the rifle. I think, I'm really preaching to the choir here, but the AR-15 in general, not specific to Daniel Defense, is a very intuitive and easy to use rifle. Controls are always in the right place. It's not too heavy, but it's also not too light. It's the barrel length for 14.5 is not too long, but not too short. So it's a very easy gun to pick up, even with minimal trigger time behind it. And so I found that I learned quickly with it. And then also when I've had friends who had practically no exposure to shooting the AR-15, they were able to pick it up well under the right supervision too. So, if you pick up the M4, it's a really great kind of do-all length that many brands make, but it'll be very easy to pick up and use. So regardless of your skill level, I would recommend it on that sense. So now let's talk about the durability and reliability of this gun. First things first, 10,000 rounds is a lot to me, but to some that's, really hardly any. I'm sure to a civilian that could be a lot to some, but also to the military, that's like probably nothing. So just another thing to keep in mind. But one thing I've noticed is just kind of a little tip of the hat is that I've taken this rifle out, as low as like 20 degrees Fahrenheit up until I think I remember is like 113 in the sweltering Texas heat. And it's always performed well. It's not like the rifle is, don't get me wrong, it's not like melting or freezing or anything. But my point being, regardless of the temperature, you can still shoot it very well as long as you know what you're doing. It's not like the tolerances were so low that when it's really hot, the BCG or the upper receiver loosens up too much, or if it's too cold, it'll be there's too much friction to function. There's none of that happening, which is a very good thing, of course. Of the 5,000-6,000 rounds, roughly of steel ammo that I shot through this gun, was steel generally considered to be a little lower quality, but not like bad for your rifle. I've had probably 10 or fewer than 10 times where the next round wouldn't cycle. But if I shot using the same magazines and the same rifle with brass ammo, it's never been an issue. So I'm going to assume that has something to do with the loads from tool ammo or from Wolf. And unsurprisingly, the action has smoothed up quite considerably as I've just shot this gun a lot more. I also have a phosphate bulk carrier group in here, which, was excellent. I love it. But there are some, coatings which are considered to be smoother. But even for this phosphate-coated BCG, it's worked just fine. And on the top of the BCG, I'm actually going to jump over now to more of like a top-down view because I want you guys to see how the parts have worn over time, specifically with the BCG as I mentioned, and just, for the upper receiver as well. I won't talk about the lower because it's been fine. So as you can see, there's a fair amount of wear on the top of the bolt carrier group, particularly around the rails where the finish is worn off. And these are just the contact surfaces where, as the M4 cycles, it creates friction and then there's, wear. But there's really nothing to be concerned about. Now, when we move over to the bolt itself, you'll also notice something pretty similar. On all the high friction areas like the lugs or the bolt face, a lot of the finish is worn off, but there are no actual chips or any kind of cracks in any of the key areas here, which is a really good thing. And then the same goes for the cam pin as well, another very key piece of the bolt carrier group. It takes a lot of rotation, but as you can see here, while the finish is worn off, there really isn't anything alarming about the amount of wear on this. And just finishing up with the firing pin too, we can see it's a pretty normal firing pin, pretty standard. I've checked up close and there are no dimples or any kind of cracks or chips as well. So overall for the bolt carrier group, there's definitely some wear on it, but nothing to be alarmed about. And I'll throw in the charging handle here too. You'll also see that there is some wear here, but again, same old, nothing to be concerned about. As you rack the charging handle, just like every other piece here, there's friction on some of the contact surfaces, and it's worn in quite nicely. Now, I will say all of this has been a result of a cleaning schedule, which is maybe a little more meticulous than you really need for an AR-15. I'll lube this rifle every about, 200 rounds, just, a couple drops of CLP on the contact surfaces. And then I'll actually do like a field strip and clean every about 500 rounds or so. Definitely more than I need to. I will admit I baby my rifles a bit, but you know, I'm proud of owning them. Take care of your tools, they'll take care of you. And so I think this is a product of a rifle that's worn quite nicely under that cleaning schedule. Now, I definitely don't think you need to clean your AR-15 this frequently, Daniel Defense or otherwise. It's, you know, the rifle's been designed so well that it frankly just doesn't need to be cleaned this meticulously. This is just more of a personal choice. But this is an example of the kind of wear-in you would see, you know, given the kind of maintenance that I just mentioned. So we've taken a look at performance and accuracy, then also durability and reliability. So let's talk about what I like about this gun. So the biggest thing, and this should come as no surprise based on how I've been talking throughout this video, is its reliability. That really is like the key thing for me there. I wanted a rifle that I know that I knew that if I picked it up, it'll always function as I needed to, regardless of the ammo that I use and, you know, all these other conditions. And it absolutely has performed very well. I genuinely feel very confident and comfortable using this rifle. First, because of how it's been made, the manufacturing quality control, but also, again, let's not forget, training and the shooter skill is another key component of that. Now, so the other things that I like here are more about the AR-15, you know, platform in general. They're not specific to Daniel Defense, but I again like the size and the weight of this rifle. I find that 14.5 is definitely not too heavy and it's not too long. It's a really good overall generalist kind of barrel length where you still get great performance. It can hit some distances, but it's short enough that you can use it to maneuver if you need that. So that's also another really great thing. I've also mentioned how intuitive the rifle is and just how easy it is to use, and it's just comfortable to use too. I also appreciate that I haven't had to switch any components out of necessity. What I like about this gun, specifically mine, is the M4A1 Block II kind of look. I don't know, I guess I just have a thing for, you know, aesthetic clones of military rifles like the M16. But I just think it looks sexy as hell. I think it's a great rifle, and beyond the looks, it is easy to use and as comfortable as I've probably mentioned like 10 times already. Another thing that also gives me comfort about this rifle, and I need to be careful not to sound like a shill, but I do appreciate the fact that Daniel Defense generally has a reputation of being very, there's the word again, reliable and trustworthy in terms of the, you know, manufacturing of their parts. And there are some people with, you know, valid negative criticisms, but I don't know if those are just lemon products or not. But that is a nice little extra vote of confidence, you know, psychological confidence whenever I pick up the gun too. So with all these things that I said, let's talk about what I don't like. I mentioned just, you know, in the last section that, you know, the 14.5 is an accessible gun. Well, accessible means many things, and it's not just the barrel length. Price also dictates how accessible something is. And one thing I don't like is the price. That's honestly the biggest thing. Now, I chose to buy this rifle knowing how much it would cost, but bear with me. I paid about $1,800 for just the rifle, which is already a lot. And then it also didn't come with sights. You know, you would think for $1,800 you would get a pair of sights that would come with it, but you know, again, I knew what I was getting myself into and I went for it anyway. And so while this M4A1 is my favorite gun, I do need to be objective also and say that at that kind of price point, yes, you can get more accessible, there's the word, affordable brands that are still, you know, very good quality, like BCM I've mentioned, and use the extra money, $500-600 for ammo, for extra parts, or just save the money, or like a range membership. That, I will admit, I think that is a very compelling and valid argument that the price point isn't for everyone. I think when people buy Daniel Defense, generally they equate the name with quality control, which in a product like a rifle or any kind of gun obviously is, you know, is paramount, right? But I think there also is that element, like any kind of products, you know, there's always like a tier, right? You are paying also for the name as well. I have no problem doing that for some products, but yeah, just kind of keep that in mind. You're getting great quality control, but you are paying also for the name. So this is to say price is the biggest con. Again, notice how I didn't mention anything about the reliability or, you know, the legitimacy of the product itself and how it performs. It's just the price. The last thing I will say that is not a con for me, but some people will gripe about, which I can understand, is that this M4A1 comes with, you know, the Picatinny rail, the RIS II rail. It is not considered to be the newest thing. I personally really love it and will always recommend it, but some people will go for M-LOK rails because they are lighter and they still work well. The M-LOK is a thinner rail, so they're selling for that, but personally, I love Picatinny and, you know, call me close-minded, I'm just gonna stick with it. So, in summary, what do I think about this gun? Would I recommend it? Kind of a broken record. If you want a very reliable gun and you like, you know, having a little more kind of psychological comfort with the name, you know, the name is synonymous with quality control, and I think this product shows it. And you want a good overall generalist kind of barrel length that's easily accessible in terms of paperwork and, you know, actual inventory, then yes, I absolutely would recommend the Daniel Defense. However, I would not recommend this to you if it is, well, not within your budget or you just don't think it's worth it. People will ask sometimes if, you know, the difference between like a BCM rifle, let's say a typical one, and then a Daniel Defense, let's just say it's $500-600. Is the Daniel Defense $500-600 better? Only you can answer that. My personal opinion, no, I don't think it really is. I will always recommend Daniel Defense because it's my first rifle. It's always going to work. But for me, usually what I do is when people want recommendations is that I'll list, you know, different, you know, companies in different tiers, and I will always recommend Daniel Defense if they can stretch or if it's within their budget. I genuinely think this is a very good product and is a very trustworthy, reliable one, but you know, the money thing is subjective. So thanks again for tuning in for this review, guys. Again, this has been a fabulous rifle and I've really liked it, but just keep in mind some of the, you know, the observations I've had. Let me know in the comments if there's anything that I didn't address that you were hoping that I would. I will be more than happy to talk about it and kind of give my opinions of it or what I've noticed. So stick around. I'll do some more of these kind of review videos for some pistols as well that I have. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one.